The Son of Man himself did not come to be served, but to serve. That word service covers so much, and as Father Richard was just saying, what about the two buccos looking for preferment? I suppose it proves that it takes all sorts. Our Lord wasn't working with perfect people, and as Father Richard was suggesting, there was a mighty row in the dressing room over where they wanted to be picked. It's quite daunting to stand here. I feel honoured and, yes, more than a little intimidated to be standing in such a special, beautiful place, this very blessed basilica. But I said I would, to be honest, in large part because I knew that three of my friends and colleagues, Carol Coleman, Marty Morrissey and Brian Dobson, had done so before, and they had lived to tell the tale. And I suppose when I thought about the three of us and the fact that we all work in what's generally called public service broadcasting, I felt the link to today's theme, the gift of service. And while the public might recognise that they're being served by those coming across the airwaves, there is so much more that has to be done in the background to make things happen. Some of the people who were never in studio stand out for me for their service to others. One man who invariably raised my spirits in the mornings was the uniformed security man at the barrier, one of the New Irish, with his little salute and his very big smile, and it just made you want to do as well as you could. Similarly, way back in the day when I used to work on a Sunday, there was a chef in the canteen, a real dub, if ever you met one, and this guy took big pride, he took huge pride in delivering the perfect fried egg. And he always engaged in a bit of banter, and he threw in a few mushrooms on the side. That cheerful service provided by those guys, it went way beyond any job description. And similarly, I have to say, the researchers and producers who prepared me for the programs I presented often went far beyond the call of duty. I would never be able to thank them all enough for the countless mistakes they preempted or the gaps they filled, often with minutes or even seconds to spare. They saved me from myself more times than I care to remember. Indeed, the longer my career went on, the more acutely aware I became of how much I relied and needed to rely on others to make me look and sound good, or at least plausible. One example that comes to mind was the day that David Bowie died. His death was a big late-breaking story. I didn't know a whole lot about him other than he was a singer, as I said earlier, being a Christy Moore or a Sean Cain man myself. But I didn't have to worry because the team got together all I needed to make sure I could appear knowledgeable when I was interviewing guests and asking questions. Similarly, with authors and their books, my research briefs would often make it seem like I'd read an entire book before doing a morning interview, when in fact my insightful, informed questions were due to their knowledge, their generosity, their skill and hard work. Because sometimes you just didn't have time to read the books, though I suppose with some authors I owed it to them and I did manage it. I've no idea what many of those colleagues believed, but when I look back, I think the kind of actions and behaviours that they showed should be second nature to those of us who like to call ourselves Christian. And if I were to distinguish briefly between simply doing something and giving it that little bit extra, doing it with a sense of service, I would say that perhaps the difference is this. Acts of Christian service come with a sense of love and generosity, and that service comes from the heart. I've been in Tala Hospital a lot recently, visiting my eldest brother, Lorcan. He's been in and out of there for 10 or 12 years now with cancer, always good-humoured and fighting the good fight. He is surrounded by a huge sense of love and service. Aside from his wife and children who are incredibly gentle and attentive, the kindness of the carers, the nurses, the doctors and the other staff is palpable. You can see it in their smiles and the efforts to make him comfortable and the encouragement to just eat something. And you simply cannot put a price tag or a paycheck on that kind of love. The particular type of love I'm calling service with a capital S. Lorcan, when he has the energy, he's texting friends, sharing pictures of his grandchildren, showing strength and smiling for his loved ones and thinking of others. Indeed, he's even thinking of us here in this basilica this day, because when I told him I was coming here, he said, be sure to give a shout out to the Mary's Meals Pilgrims, one of the many charities he supports. I'm not sure about today or this evening, but I know they were here in numbers yesterday, all of them living reminders of St. Francis of Assisi's refrain, it is in giving that we receive. This is the great mystery of service and divine love. It is in giving that we receive. And Lorcan is one of those countless people who have made service to others his way of life, be it in the GAA where he worked and played, or in his parish or in his family. A couple of years ago, his good friend, the Sagart Parosh, the parish priest of Newbridge, Father Jimmy Doyle, died suddenly at a relatively early age. And Lorcan produced a book of tributes to him so that people would know the story of a good modern-day priest. In a good life, service is at the heart, is at the center of everything. And I think we'd all agree that at the end of our lives, all that would really matter is what we have done for others. A former papal nuncio, Archbishop Charles Brown, he put it very succinctly when he visited our parish a number of years ago in South Dublin. He said that the whole gospel could be summed up in 5 words. You did it to me. You did it to me. What this means, I suppose, is that in any encounter we have, there awaits a child of God and an encounter with Christ waiting for you and me to love and serve him. About a dozen years ago, Lorcan and I went to visit 2 of our aunts in South Africa. Anna and Celia were sisters of the Holy Cross, and their religious vocations took them from a hillside farm, a sheep farm in the Beara Peninsula in West Cork, first to Belfast and then to Pretoria, where they spent decades working in the field of education. Sadly, Celia died in South Africa shortly before we arrived, though we were there for her funeral. Anna, meanwhile, went to heaven on Christmas Day a few years ago at the great age of 99. And we brought back little bags of soil from the earth where they lie buried to maintain that link between home and away. I should have mentioned earlier, but I didn't, maybe for reasons of time, and I hope Father Richard would indulge me. There was another aunt and nun here in this Archdiocese of Tuam, Sister Canisius, as she was known in Tuam and Turmakidi, Auntie Monica to us, teacher of Irish and Tiroliacht, and she was a tough one, but I think her students got results. But those women were like many thousands of other Irish women who served both here and abroad over the centuries. Decisions to serve took them to the ends of the earth, and they became great teachers, great nurses and servants of God in ways that no AI or technology ever could replicate, because their work was human and divine. It came from the heart. They were able to look people in the eye, and they saw God in every single person that they served. And I think there is something else about a Christian notion of service too. The other side of the coin is gratitude. Because when we are grateful, be it for our God-given talents or the service that we have been given by others, we can pay the gift forward and help someone else along the way. One of my sons, a very good teacher in the making, recently suggested that I try a little experiment or a practice to build into my life. He said, just think of a person who has made your life better in some way, great or small. And as you give thanks to God for them, see if this doesn't encourage or inspire you to reach out in turn in a similarly generous way to someone else. And of course, the other challenge of love and service is that we must be prepared to offer them to all, to everyone. Because Christ he doesn't allow us to choose the people to whom we will act as Christian, or should. Indeed, as I prepared these words, I was reminded of a very saintly, a very holy priest in our school in Galway. He used to bring a group out on a cycle every Sunday morning. The purpose of that cycle was to bring food and clothes and some little treats as well to some traveller families camped on the side of the road, literally on the side of the road under canvas. And then around that time, a traveller woman was allocated a house, a council house in Galway. And to say it didn't go down well with some of the neighbours would be something of an understatement. There was a big protest, because allocating a house to a traveller was treating that traveller as one of us. But another priest from our school didn't see it like some of the neighbours, and he brought her a bag of coal. That delivery was disapproved of by some, but because he had transgressed the boundaries of us and them. But to him, there could be no such distinction. She was another child of God, a human being in need of love and warmth, and no less deserving of dignity. But you know, for all the merits of practical Christianity or beautiful acts of service like these, that's not why we need priests. There's a deeper reason. And I'd like to quote briefly from an American bishop, Robert Barron, who wrote about this recently on his Word on Fire platform. He has many admirers and some critics, but I don't think one can disagree too much with these words. He said, "Priests have been needed in every age, and they are needed today. For the kingdom of heaven must be proclaimed, the poor must be served, God must be worshipped, and the sacraments must be administered." And he goes on, "We are wired for God. We will never satisfy the deepest longing of our hearts apart from God. The secularist ideology teaches that sufficient amounts of wealth, of pleasure, power, or honor will make us happy. Who will counter this?" he asks. "Who will speak to this culture of the beauty of God? Who will remind us that our lives are not about us? Who will break open the words of the gospel and spread out the banquet table of Christ's body and blood? This is why we need priests," says Bishop Robert Barron. And that's the end of the quote. We are less than a decade away from the 1600th anniversary of the coming of Christianity to Ireland, and on current trends, there may not be that many priests actively around to help with the celebrations. So it's not surprising that the bishops have called on us all to pray for vocations, especially of diocesan priests. Otherwise, we mightn't be far away from trying to survive as a priestless church, at least in the Western world. Now, I know we're all too painfully aware of priests who, by their crimes and also the misguided and irresponsible behaviour of their superiors, who have ruined the lives of many. And of all the answers to the thousands of questions I asked in broadcasting, one tends to stick out more than most others. I asked Archbishop Eamon Martin, for how long the church would be haunted by the abuse crisis. "Hopefully forever," he said, "hopefully forever." Because when you are talking about a crisis, and these are my words, not his, on a scale perhaps more damaging to the church than anything in history, it needs to be remembered and never forgotten. And as we move to a close here, I think it's right that we think about and pray for those who are called to the priesthood, those who have a vocation to show Christ's love to the world in a particular way. We can all of us think of a priest or priests who have made a positive difference among our family circle, to us as individuals, to our friends, our community, and we can give thanks for their vocation and their service. Because we all know priests and religious who have done huge amounts of good and offered their lives for others, and they need and deserve our support, our gratitude and our prayers, and we need more of them. Admittedly, we face into a future where it looks as if many young people perhaps won't be hearing or heeding that call. Those young people, though, still need our support and prayers, and even though for them actually coming to the priesthood or studying for it is an unlikely step. But maybe we can still leave here this evening thinking about how we can remind them of the message which is at the heart of the life of every good priest and indeed every good Christian. Perhaps we could somehow find the courage and the words to invite them to go the extra mile to their teammates, to their siblings, or the people in their class, and to become more loving, more compassionate, and more generous than perhaps they thought possible. And if we do that, we can guarantee them that a life spent in service will be full of adventure, for they'll never know where our God of love will lead, and more often than not, it'll bring them to people and places perhaps beyond their wildest dreams. And I suppose if each one of us could inspire the young people around us really to believe in that lovely line of St. Francis, "It is in giving that we receive," then we would be delivering to them a true act of service. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me, and God bless and safe home.